As the moonlight flickered into the room, the young man turned restlessly in his bed. He didn't even know if he had closed his eyes. Sleep had become a foreign luxury for him lately. Every night, when he felt the presence of that strange presence, insomnia overtook him. The young man had researched online about this entity, which he believed to be more than just an urban legend. However, all he found were repetitive scary stories and assumptions. He had no clue what it was, where it came from, or why it was following him. All she knew was that every night before he came, she reached the peak of that unspeakable fear. One day, he plucked up courage and devoted himself to research once more. Later that night, in an old bookstore, among the dusty shelves, he found an old notebook wrapped in a leather binding. On the cover, in faded gold letters, was written "Guardian of the Moon." His heart began to race. Maybe this would give him the answers he was looking for. When he returned home, he opened the notebook with trembling hands. The pages were yellowed and some were almost too worn to read. However, between the pages of the notebook, he found a story that astonished him. The story tells of a man who, long ago, once lived in a quiet village. Every cycle of the moon, the man was visited by a mysterious being that transcended the boundaries of the village. This being was known among the people as the Guardian of the Moon. They said that sometimes he was observed, sometimes hiding in the shadows, and sometimes he directly infiltrated their dreams. The story goes that with each visit the man grew weaker, a wound deep in his soul, and eventually he went mad. People believe that the Guardian of the Moon had brought evil to their village. However, no one had any clear information about what it was or why it had come. The young man felt a deep anxiety as he turned the pages. Would the Guardian of the Moon drive him to madness too? Or could he perhaps find a way out despite her presence? He summoned the courage to deal with his inner conflict and tried to fall asleep, as he did every night. However, something was different that night. When he woke up, he saw a black silhouette in the middle of his room. His heart felt like it was going to burst. Unable to make a sound, she lay still and tried not to meet its eyes. Even as she waited in fear, she wanted to see what it was. Time passed and the silence was devouring him. Finally, the presence made its voice heard, but instead of the terrible scream he expected, he heard a soothing whisper. "Do not be afraid," said the being. "I am not the Guardian of the Moon. I am only a traveler who enters your dreams." The young man gasped. "What do you want?" he asked in a trembling voice. The being remained silent and then sighed deeply. "I want to help you," he said finally. "I can make a deal with you, but the price will be heavy." The young man's heart was beating fast. However, a glimmer of hope appeared inside him. Perhaps this being could show him the way out. Finally, the young man decided to make a deal with the entity. They set the terms of the deal, and from that day on, the entity began to guide him. Late at night, it would enter the young man's dreams and give him clues. Over time, the nightmares diminished and the young man's soul found peace. However, the deal came at a heavy price. The entity was draining the young man's energy to manipulate his dreams. Every night, the young man became a little weaker. However, he was willing to pay the price because he no longer had to face the nightmares. As the days passed, the young man's body grew weaker and weaker. Eventually, The presence of the guardian of the moon could not last until it left the young man's body. However, the young man's spirit remained with him forever. Since that day, the people of the village have never known the true nature of the guardian of the moon. However, the young man's courage and sacrifice were still the talk of the townspeople. Thanks to him, a ray of hope shone even in the darkness.